What the FinTech, your FinTech Feel Good show. What the FinTech is a news and information platforms covering the latest FinTech and tech developments in Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and Asia. Join us every week for an discussion with tech figures to discuss about entrepreneurship, emerging technologies, customer engagement, and partnerships. And today we have Peter from Prenetics. Hi, Peter. How are you today?
Hi, Medhy. How are you?
I'm very good. Very cool to have you here. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're the CTO of Prenetics, one of the best company we have here in Hong Kong and also in the world. So I'm really happy to have a figure like you coming here and discussing about technology, product, and your journey as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's very excited to be here.
So before we start to speak about what you are doing at Prenetics, maybe we can go with a quick introduction about yourself and where you are from, what you have done before, and what you are doing now.
Yeah. So my name is Peter. I'm originally from Hong Kong. So I spent the first few years in Hong Kong, but I spent the majority of my life in the UK, actually educated in the UK. Went to university there, got really interested in computer science. So I've done computer science all the way to a PhD at Oxford, and then actually moved around to a few countries. Worked in the Netherlands, looking into e-commerce. Also been involved with some research projects across Europe with 8 different universities. And then after that, going into different industries, like in investment banking, and then looking into payment industry, but all a lot to do with engineering, software engineering, computer science, and working in different industry in the UK. About 5 years ago, after I set up the international business, payment business for TravelX as a head of engineering, 5 years ago, I saw an opportunity in Hong Kong at Prenetics, really to use my skills to make more impact to people's lives. In this case, in healthcare, and I chose that route, and I thought, hey, you know what, let's do it. And so actually, Prenetics took me to Hong Kong, and 5 years, and that was 5 years as a CTO at Prenetics, and obviously we've been working very hard in developing products in the healthcare space. And the last few years, obviously with the pandemic, we spent a lot of time trying to scale it up and try to help the communities in both Hong Kong and the UK to fight COVID. And right now we are at a juncture where, after being listed on Nasdaq, now we're really thinking about how we can complete the end-to-end health ecosystem to really bring affordable, accessible healthcare to everyone.
Pretty interesting. You have the background on payments, you have the background on healthcare, you are working on ecosystems as well. It's really interesting. I'm really looking forward to this interview. But just before we go a bit more in detail, maybe you can share with us what you are passionate about and what you feel inspired by, especially on your work or on your tech side, because you're a CTO, right?
Yeah, so I think technology has always been my interest, and looking at how to solve difficult problems, not just the technology side, but how they engage with the business, how they engage with the people. I think that's always been an interest to me. Looking at engineering, also looking at how we can improve delivery, improve efficiency, because engineers are, as you might know, we aren't the most hardworking individuals when it comes to it. We actually want things to be automated as much as possible. And reusability actually is one key thing. So that one of my passion is keep learning that piece. But of course, I would say that my interest beyond technology at times is looking at how I can continue to better myself to make greater impact. I think that's really the key, and that could be anything that I do. And I also like to challenge myself a lot with doing sports, doing work, technical work, and otherwise. So there are a lot of other things that I have interest in from that perspective. Right now, really trying to hone in onto technology and trying to make that impact in healthcare.
Thank you very much for this introduction. I think we can see who you are, definitely. Before we go for the question of Prenetics, maybe can you introduce Prenetics? I'm sure a lot of people know about it with the different advertising or, the KOL using some of the solutions, but maybe it's better that you introduce what is it for people who don't know.
So Prenetics started actually quite a few years ago, but actually started as a very small laboratory in Hong Kong, and from there we grew. We started looking at how we can offer affordable testing to individuals, and by 2019 we looked at delivering our first direct-to-consumer DNA test, Circle DNA. The difference from that DNA test from a lot of the other DNA tests at the time in the market, and even now, is that we use something called whole exome sequencing. And whole exome sequencing is an NGS technology that actually allows us to give a very broad range of results. Here we're offering more than 500 reports for one sample to the customer, and these samples actually reports ranges from a lot of different categories, from your nutrition, from your diet, to your sleep and stress, to your drug sensitivity, to your health risks, all the way down to cancer risks, and also your carrier risks. And if you look at that combination, that comprehensive test, that's the beginning. And since then, we continue trying to look into how we can add more value to our customer from a healthcare perspective. Now, when it comes to the pandemic that hit 2.5 years ago, it really changed the way we worked from a perspective of, hey, we actually have the technology to help the community. When you think about COVID testing, it's actually very similar to, it is a DNA test, right? And at the end of the day, it's PCR, it is a DNA test, it's just different types of DNA. And so we had the equipment, we had the knowledge. So we went in and actually see what we can do with Pivot and say how we can deliver COVID testing for Hong Kong and the UK. And then we scaled up that fairly rapidly and aggressively. I still remember back in 2020 when we found out that the English Premier League needed to restart their match because they hold it in March 2020 and they need to restart again by May. We need to provide testing capability to them. We only have 4 days to start testing, and that means we need to. At that time, they require a separate infrastructure in the EU data region, and so we actually lift and shifted our infrastructure on AWS across to actually be able to serve them the testing, to conduct the testing in 4 days. And all of that is fortunately based on an architecture where we can actually deliver that shift fairly quickly. But since then, obviously, we've done a lot of testing across with communities at airports, with different sports events and things like that across Hong Kong and the UK.
It's pretty interesting. I was making some research before you come here, and I saw that you deliver more than 20 million of tests. Is it correct?
Yes. So today we've done over 20 million tests, and I think one of the key things is being able to scale up. I still remember at the beginning where we were only doing a few hundred to 1,000 tests a day, going to globally we're doing 50,000 tests a day across the regions. Right, being able to do that. There's a lot of thinking about how we can architect our system to be scalable because you can find out that, so we use a lot of cloud infrastructure. You can put more servers in, but if your system are not architected in the right way, no amount of servers is going to help you, or they're going to be very expensive. You're going to have one giant server, which is actually the most expensive things you can ask for on the cloud. Architecturally, you would go for many small servers. And then you need to build an architecture that can support that kind of infrastructure. The other piece about scaling is obviously being able to handle the throughput, but also being very fault tolerant. Because let's say we're running when we were doing max scaling, we got over 100 servers, small ones, albeit, but they are nevertheless 100 servers working across the regions. Then you need to be able to tolerate unhealthy servers as well, i.e. servers can go down. And especially we use something called, technically we use something called spot instance. These are actually AWS types of instances that allows us to get it at a much lower cost, but then the server itself actually can be removed at short notice. So then we built a system to allow that to happen. So that's another piece that, I would say was key to allow us to scale the operation. Technically, I think what's more important also on the operational side, that the team were able to manage the lab, the operation and logistics, being able to scale up that. If you think about it, for example, with the English Premier League, we were dealing with 20 clubs across the country. So all of a sudden, from a centralized office in one area in the UK, suddenly they have to scale up and they'd be able to deliver tests across the country in the UK. I remember in Hong Kong, we had to do the same thing for restaurants. We have to test all of the restaurants in Hong Kong in a few weeks' time. That was the mandate. And so we had to deliver a logistic operation, allow us to send kits to. I actually took the trip to go into restaurants to deliver kits for them to do testing. And so that has to also, again, so it's a teamwork between operation, lab, and technology.
It's pretty interesting because as a consumer, I did my test with Prenetics many times, so individually or at the airport or to the community center here in Hong Kong. And I'm always amazed about that operation and scalability that you have, because we have the result of the test in a couple of hours. We receive directly a text on the phone, 6, 9, 10 hours after. So what was the challenges for you to put everything in one motion? Did you do some iteration, or it was like the work of everyone during like weeks and weeks to improve this and take some of the maybe the feedbacks from the Premier League football clubs or some of the consumers, or what you have seen creating some problems on the flow?
So I think a lot of the things we do, we didn't get there in one go. That's for sure. So I remember when we first offer PCR tests, the turnaround time is much longer than now. If you look now at the airports, we're talking a much shorter turnaround time because of the requirements at the airport for people coming into the airport, people traveling out, but also in the community as well. We actually reduce quite a lot of the lead time, the turnaround time for a COVID test to be done. And that means actually keep iterating how we can optimize our system and optimize our workflow. That's the workflow from collecting the sample, from the sample coming into the lab, processing. So in terms of the lab, there is actually many steps in extracting the sample, putting them onto the machine, getting the result off the machines, getting the result from the machine to the system, analyze it, and then review the results. All of that workflow requires also measurements and tracking to make sure that we get that lead time. And I think over the time, being able to optimize that with many team members working together, it does take many iterations and learning as well. And so it's not something that I would say in one go. It's definitely iteration, and we're still learning, we're still iterating, we're still trying to improve. I think even now at this stage in the pandemic, we're still trying to increase our throughput, especially at the airport. We actually needed to make a bigger lab at the airport recently because there is a demand for more people coming in. It actually peaked recently, just last week, peaked in terms of arrival passengers, and that meant we need to be able to handle that throughput of test samples and giving the result back to the customers and the government in good time. So that we continue to improve.
As a consumer, as a traveler, I can see just the user journey there. But you spoke about how you use AWS and the cloud to really put the technology behind what we don't see on the cloud. Is it really difficult as a CTO to move that quick on a big server on the cloud? And how do you manage the technology behind what we can see?
I think the AWS piece on the cloud piece really. The important thing is delivering the architecture easy for the team members to get on. So we choose a technology, we choose a tech stack that is fairly consistent in our mobile, web, backend, same programming language, same tech stack. And we're also trying to automate as much as we can in terms of our testing, build, and deployment, and as well as operations. So we don't necessarily need a dedicated team to manage the infrastructure per se. We opt for the DevSecOps model, where if you look at the ops model, we don't need and we shouldn't have a separate team to operate the system. We want our engineers to operate and build at the same time. So that means being able to, that's one of the benefits of actually moving up to the cloud as well, is some of these managed service provided by the cloud, by cloud provider like AWS, they offer us the capability to be able to see what happens in production, to be able to set up our deployment pipeline much more efficiently, right? And allow us to drive everything through source code from a technology standpoint. And I think that's the key. Driving things from the source code means that it becomes transparent to every team members how things works. If it's a bit of a black box, then it becomes very difficult for team members to be able to grasp it and be able to understand it. But if everything driven by structural code, source code from the origin, then everything is laid out, and they would take their time to learn about how things work and structured. So I think one of the most important thing I would say in this case is making the tools and the technology simple, so that the team can really focus on the domain problem we're trying to solve, which is delivering the healthcare solutions, delivering the tests.
One of the things we discussed before this interview, but also one of the role of the CTO is to pick and select the right technology. How do you operate this way to really find the right technology you would like to use and bring security, efficiency, and awareness of the team as well?
Yeah. So technology-wise, in terms of, let's say, which programming language to use, we chose, for example, TypeScript. For that piece is quite interesting. We wanted a language that is statically typed, but at the same time we wanted to be able to traverse a mobile, web, and backend in the same language, so that actually our engineers can work across the stack. They don't have to worry about I can only work on front end or web because I can't work on mobile and things. That means the team can organize themselves around the problem they're trying to solve much easier. That's one piece. Now, technology aside, or the choice of tools aside, the architecture still need to be designed in a way where it can be evolved quickly. It can be understood quickly. So say we run a set of microservices on a Kubernetes clusters, and those services operate fairly consistently. So they are loosely coupled, they have high cohesions, and at the same time, they have the same set of security measure on top, i.e., we build our security using layers. So we don't have the concept of, if you enter into our office network, you get access to everything. We work on a zero trust model. So that means everything that, no matter what you need to do, as long as you need to get to a piece of resource, you need to be authenticated. And not just once, but multiple factors. So, and that way is giving us to make sure that if anything becomes vulnerable, and it does happen, we're not at the mercy of that point.
I would like to come back to the team just after, but one of my questions is also my experience is the first time I really used Prenetics product was Circle DNA on my phone. So I did the DNA test at that time, send it to your lab and receive everything on my phone. And I remember when I won that prize a couple of years ago, I received a PDF on my email, and I couldn't read it because it was like 15 pages, not from your company, but from one of the DNA tests, right? And when I got the mobile phone application, everything was so smooth. Everything was really easy to understand. I have my profile, understand where I was tolerant, intolerant, what kind of thing I can eat or not eat, where I'm sensible. How the team can come with so user-friendly applications and bring more features. You say you have 500 tests, right? So how can you work with all those data that you collect and make it so simple for everyone to understand what they have to do or not do?
So from a product standpoint, I think there's a lot of work in understanding the usability. One of the key challenge in healthcare is accessibility. Not in terms of being able to get to getting that test or getting that treatment, getting that service, but also once you do get to that service, the interface to that service is often quite difficult, quite complicated, and we are looking at how to bring that test closer to, or the healthcare service closer to the individuals, i.e. making that interface as simple as possible, making it more accessible hence. So in terms of the mobile app development, we really look at, what are the use cases for someone who wants to do one of these tests, and also a DNA test. But not only that, but how would they use the test, and how would they manage those tests, and how would they best look at those information? Because 500 plus reports is actually a lot of information. So having a easy way for them to access that information and be able to go through is quite important. Having that mobile apps allow the individual to manage their tests. And in fact, now we offer other tests also on the same mobile app. We recently this year launched a set of at-home blood tests, a non-invasive, I have to say painless. It is invasive, but it's actually painless blood tests. It's called a snapshot. And those tests allows the customers to look at their food sensitivity, look at their heart health, and look at their COVID antibody. And we are looking into other tests using the same types of device for blood collection. And these tests allows us to, or the mobile apps allow us to deliver all these services in one single ecosystem. So you don't need to download a new app. You don't need to sign up a new account. You can keep all your information in that single app, and you can use it as an input and output from the digital world into your physical world, and trying to understand yourself, and try and use this to get more actionable insights about yourself, so you can make decision of your lifestyle, or when you go to see a health professional, you can use this as a reference point. And of course, with the DNA test, some of the tests could be quite complicated, the results of it. So what we also offer are actually free health coach consultation by health coaches. So you can schedule a consultation with them, and they can explain that to you. And if you do a premium test with us, that includes the genetic components in cancer risks, and also carrier risks. Then there's also a genetic consultation component to that as well.
When you say there is no invasion, or it's painless, is it similar to a gravity test, like when you press on with like a small tool here, and you have a drop of blood, and you can do your test?
Yeah. So the Tap 2 device we use on Snapshot is actually painless because the needle is short enough. It doesn't get to your pain receptor, but at the same time, it is long enough to actually be able to get the blood out. So is that very small gap allow us to be able to capture the blood painlessly, and also just enough for the results to come out.
Very cool, very cool. I just did an allergy test. If I knew it before, I will do my test with you, because my allergy test was like taking a sample of blood and wait for a full result, right? Yeah. But from the report I got, is super complicated to read everything. Yeah. But yeah, very interesting. So with this kind of snapshot, we can have a clear picture of what we have today, what we don't have, and we can do it like, for example, every year, and it can become like a kind of a body check annual report, something like this.
Yes, and I think that's one of the key things we wanted to do, is that we don't want customers or our users to be bothered about always have to travel to a clinic, always have to get to a centralized place to do a lot of these tests, when they can, in fact, actually do it at home. and be able to connect with the results relatively quickly through the mobile app. We offer also another test this year called ColoClear. It's a colorectal cancer early detection test through stool. Now this one is non-invasive because the alternative will be a colonoscopy. So a stool test, you can take your sample at home, and then you can send that sample back to us in the lab, and you can get the results electronically as well. So that particular test again is our thought of saying there is no need to go to a hospital or clinic to do these kind of tests. At the same time, if you think about colonoscopy, for example, not only you have to go to the clinic, you have to do a lot of setting up, right? You have to fast, you have to take time out, and you have to prepare yourself. And of course, it's not comfortable at all. And so we're trying to get rid of all of this. What do we say? Well, we think that not necessary. If you can do the test at home, comfortably at home by yourself. And so we're trying to offer more and more of these options to our customers.
You just mentioned just before on the first question, creating an end-to-end Prenetics ecosystem for health. I also see that on a couple of articles from your CEO, for example. How do you plan to create that ecosystem? How do you develop it? What is for you the health ecosystem you try to imagine and construct and build? Can you share a bit more about this?
Yeah, so our end-to-end health ecosystem is really a vision across three pillars: prevention, diagnostic, and personalized care and treatment. So across these three pillars, you can look at the different types of products and services we can offer. But one key thing is you need to find out more about yourself through various means, testing, get that result, and then find out how you can improve. So they have to become very actionable. Is there a particular service you can enroll? Is there a particular profession? If you do need to speak to a healthcare profession, can you do that virtually, for example? So telehealth comes into play with that as well. And at the same time, can we extend that further into other types of service and tests in healthcare? So the ecosystem, looking at how can bring every parts of healthcare system or healthcare services into more affordable and accessible manner digitally at home or conveniently to the individual users. And this is actually quite interesting when you think about it, because if we can build this ecosystem, we can also make sure that help those who actually have difficulty to access healthcare. Because, a lot of the times there are actually populations of people where they have difficulty access to care because of geographical reason. And with these kind of product means that they can speak to a healthcare professional digitally through a telehealth, for example. They don't need to actually go all the way to the hospital, travel however long they need to get to that. So removing that barrier would be quite important indeed.
It's I think the dream of a lot of industries, and for financial industry, FinTech, and healthcare. Definitely, it makes a lot of sense. You spoke a lot about your teams and how you pivot from making DNA kits to the COVID, and you share the incredible figures of 20 million tests. I would like to ask some question, because you're the CTO, so you take care of the entire technology, but also the teams. How big is your team? Is your team only based in Hong Kong, but you have also teams or teammates overseas?
So we've been growing our team quite aggressively to support the operations. Currently, we have around 40 engineers and across our company. We operate in Hong Kong. We also have an office in India. We have an office in UK, and also we have an office in South Africa. So at times we have engineers across all of those locations. I think one of the key things we learned also is how to work collaboratively across time zones. How do we support a 24/7 operation across time zone as well? And so this is where we learn how to have the teams not necessarily is a Hong Kong-based team or a UK-based team or an India-based team. We don't work. This is something that we found out is better not to work like that, but rather have a team that actually have members across these regions. So any given time they're working together at a problem together, and actually that means you also bring people from different mindset, different culture together to trying to find a solution. It's actually quite helpful or quite useful once you figure out if I say the right way of, or the better way of working, or the more efficient way of working based on how you plan. So we use agile methodology, how you can plan your sprint, so to speak, how you plan your iteration, and how we ensure that changes go through effectively. So we always been trying to optimize that, and we're trying to be more data informed from that perspective, i.e. We ask each of our team, and we give them tools to do that, to track their own velocity, their cycle time, looking at where their blockers are, so they can reflect and say, what they're blocking this time. Is it because of external requirement? Is it because some of the tools aren't working as well? Or is it because the knowledge gap? Or is it because other things, right? So they can reflect on it and say, actually, what is it that they need to improve on? Because after every iteration is comes to a time where they improve. Hopefully, they can apply to that in the subsequent iteration and sprints. And so all these data metrics is also giving them understanding and allow them to operate efficiently and be actually more focused on the problem they're trying to solve, rather than trying to figure out how to deploy certain things, or how to manually test certain things, and trying to remove those manual work and duplicate works.
One of my questions will be, do you find any difficulties to create a culture or share the culture of your company with your teammates across the world? And how do you promote this value of your company with them?
I think one of the key pieces is transparency. And of course, the communication comes behind it. So one of the main core value being transparent is quite important. That means you should be able to voice your opinion, your concerns to anyone, including. So we ask our team members to be able to give feedback to the peers, upward, downward, be able to share, and also not only that, but give feedback, but also be accountable for the work they do, and be able to reflect on the feedback and see how we can improve, and make that as a team effort to make sure the work gets improved together, because it is a teamwork, it is a team setting, and especially if you work across multiple regions and time zones, it is very important that everyone knows the fact that you can depend on the other team members across the other region. You can reach out to them when there is an issue, but at the same time, you need to be available as well when, maybe at odd hours if things happen, because we do have to sometimes work, or quite often work at odd hours, because we run a 24/7 operation. Be available to your team, and the team will be available to you. And then you can start depend on each other. Then you start building that bond. So I think that's quite important.
I can speak with you for many hours, to be honest with you, because it's really interesting what you are sharing. But we are really close to the end of this interview. So I would like to ask you a question about what's next for you and for Prenetics. Are you exploring new technology, new way of operations? Are you exploring maybe some trends that big corporate exploring, like Web3, Metaverse, or even blockchain or new AI technology?
So we definitely continue looking at how we can deliver more healthcare services, affordable healthcare services to our customers, and looking at how we can bring that end-to-end health ecosystem. And one of the key pieces you just mentioned is that we actually looking at how we can leverage the Web3 technology space from a healthcare context. So specifically, what we've been looking at is how we can use the Web3 technology to boost up our to even increase our security posture and our data privacy posture, from a sense that with blockchain, for example, a utility one, you can actually use that technology to establish anonymous testing, and this is something we've been prototyping. to understand how we can deliver deliver testing anonymously so that you can do a DNA test without sharing any of your PII to us. So then we're no longer the processor of the data, because the data actually, we don't need that PII data. Or the only thing we would need would be the sample, and then once the result is ready, we send you the result across using the chain through smart contract. So we're talking about, for example, using a non-crypto version of Ethereum, for example. That's something we tried on. With that kind of setup, we were able to establish chain of trust, because the data then gets shared back encrypted. The data itself is the medical data itself, obviously, will be encrypted off chain, but the proof of the data, of who gave it, who produced it, and to whom, that actually is put on the chain as an immutable transaction. So, and that means it's verifiable, and it also means that you can then use that data and use that proof to in your own decision. You can decide to share that data to other facility, to other clinics, and be able to build that trust. I think that's quite important. So this means you have complete control of your data. It also means that there's a lot lower risks on the processor side. We're not aggregating a ton of data. We don't need that for this type of work, and we can still deliver the services to our customers.
Pretty interesting. What is the biggest takeaway you hope people watching this video or listening to this podcast will take from your speech?
I think the biggest takeaway I would say is always try to learn new things. All the things that I've been saying, we've been chatting here, are not something that we know from day one. It's something that we keep learning, we keep pushing the limits, we keep iterating, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have things not work at times. But I think the most important thing is how to reflect on that very quickly and basically get back up and continue driving that. Have the same consistent mindset. I think I'm being very fortunate. I have a team at Prenetics who have a very positive mindset, very optimistic mindset, and also very driven. So we were able to keep pushing the boundaries no matter what comes to us. Times can be quite hard and tough, and there has been some very, very difficult times, but we always manage to get through if we trust one another as well. That we can just keep doing what we're strong at, and rely on others to continue working together to deliver the mission we want.
That's what makes a great team, right? Yeah. Where people can learn more about Prenetics, the company? Do you have any maybe articles also share, like posts on social media, LinkedIn, or websites they can refer to?
So our website, Prenetics.com, our company website has the information about the products we offer. Has information about our corporate finance, all that kind of detail. Obviously, if you're interested about the DNA test and the snapshot test, for DNA test, you can go into circledna.com. That's where we actually have all the information about our whole exome sequencing Circle DNA tests. And if you go to highcircle.co, you will be able to access our tests in snapshots, and ColoClear, our colorectal cancer tests, and our blood tests that way as well. And those are some of the websites that we can look at our healthcare tests. Of course, you can go to projectscreen.co. This is our website where we actually where we talk about the initiatives in fighting COVID in the past 2.5-3 years.
And if people want to learn more about you, where they can find more information about you, or how they can reach out to you?
Yes. So I'm available on social media. So LinkedIn, Twitter. I also have my personal blog. So be able to share that afterwards. And be able to access that information and can contact me through those social media, and happy to discuss.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Please feel free to share the link with me. I will share the blog with everyone here.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you here today. I learned a lot. It was very exciting to know what you have done about the past years, and it was super challenging for you. So it's a great experience.
Thank you. And it's very happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.